Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarini Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna and welcome all the devotees to the Bhagavad Gita level 2 classes from ISKCON Mangaluru. So until yesterday we covered the chapter 5, yeah. So which was about the Karma Yoga. Right? So today we are going to start a new chapter, okay, which is known as Dhyana Yoga. Okay. So yesterday there was a prelude which Lord Krishna gives in. Okay. So in all these chapters in Bhagavad Gita, you'll find one common thing is, so as we come to the end of the chapter, right? So Krishna actually gives us a hint what is going to be our next chapter. Yeah? So while we saw yesterday, we saw numerous things, right? So saying that if we get into entangled in the material senses, right? So the which are temporary, right? And then uh, which you may feel that okay, initially they are good, or say you are enjoying it, but afterwards it becomes bitter, right? So we saw different examples also, right? So initially it is very attractive, right? But afterwards it becomes a pain, right? And then so we were moving ahead, and then we saw that internally one should be always blissful, right? So externally, say one may perform his vyavaharika things, but internally one should always be connected to the Lord. So one should be internally always happy, right? Blissful. And then we saw the next sections wherein the Lord gave little bit introduction to Ashtanga Yoga, right? And then he gave us the peace formula, right? So what was the peace formula? That the Lord is the proprietor, right? He is the enjoyer and he is the best friend. So knowing these things, if we start focusing on the Lord, right? So then so we can actually better focus, and then so we'll actually take up spiritual life more seriously, right? So and then our thinking and our perception will become different, because the conception of I, me owning something will not be there. Yeah. So basically in 5.27, right, of the fifth chapter, Ashtanga Yoga was mentioned, right? So and in this chapters, right? So we'll actually discuss about Ashtanga Yoga. So the reason is because the Lord has discussed all the yoga systems in Bhagavad Gita until now, right? So he touched base Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, right? So Bhakti Yoga is yet to come. Before, from seventh chapter onwards, it's Bhakti Yoga, right? So still 12 chapters, right? So very important. And so now he's even telling about Ashtanga Yoga. So because Dhyana Yoga, but it shouldn't be that that is something missing. And then what is there in it, right? How to perform it? So whether it is feasible for us, right? So in this day and age, can we do that, right? The Lord actually gives in. And how do you practice also? The Lord tells everything, right? And then we'll see what Arjuna says after listening to all these things, right? So what does he says, right? So these are advanced stages, right? So to actually to go to Ashtanga Yoga, right, one should actually do Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? Doing that when one's mind is fully controlled, right? So then he can move to do the Ashtanga Yoga. Okay. So this is something which we'll discuss today. I think these are the things which we roughly covered here. So this is what we are going to cover, right? So detachment in yoga through detached, advancing in yoga through detached work. Yeah. Then the yoga Ruda stage, right? Further stages in the practice of yoga, necessity of controlling the trouble and mind, the destination of the unsuccessful yoga, and who is the topmost yogi. Okay. So this is the high level synopsis of this particular chapter. Okay. So now advancing in yoga through detached work. So Ashtanga yoga, right? So once we have attained, say like from Karma Kanda, right? So then we'll do Karma yoga and then we'll do Nishkama Karma yoga, right? So then you can go into the Ashtanga yoga. Yeah. So detachment comes to one who realizes that he is not autonomous in his actions, right? He understands that without Lord's sanction, he cannot do anything. So that is what the three doers, right? So when we know that without the Lord's sanction, we cannot do, right? So then only we'll get the detachment. Else you will be feeling that everything is owned by me and then I create, right? So one who purifies his vision and activity by Nishkama Karma Yoga, right, can make further advancement by practice of meditation on super soul. Okay. So once we are into that stage, right, at the stage of Nishkama Karma Yoga, so post that we can actually start meditating on the Paramatma, right? So Paramatma actually he resides in our heart. So see with the four hands, right? You see Shankh, Chakra, Pada, and Padma and Gada, right? So he'll be in this form, so he's residing. And then, so only if we are at this stage, we can actually focus our mind on the super soul, right? So by meditating on the super soul, one can develop devotion to him in Bhakti Yoga, understanding that Krishna is supreme enjoyer, ultimate controller, and best friend. This is the peace formula, right? So if we have these knowledge, right, so then we can actually focus much better on the super soul. Okay. So this is what. So knowledge increases, not the body detached, Ganya Kumaras, and consciousness increases in super soul. So um, as we finish Jnana Yoga and all, right? So we should know the examples of the four Kumaras. Okay. So the four Kumaras and Sukadev Goswami also, right? So they were earlier Gyanis. Okay. And then eventually even the Gyanis, right? So they'll not be satisfied and then say they pick up bhakti, right? So the four Kumaras, seven they were actually wandering across the universes, right? So they happened to smell the tulsi. They actually smelled the aroma of tulsi. Okay, so which was worn by the Lord. So by smelling that, their consciousness changed, and then they actually converted them into bhakti yoga, right? So they started doing bhakti yoga, right? Similarly, Sukadev Goswami was an highly elevated soul. So initially he was a jnani, right? And then say he went into the forest. So he left the home, and then because to meditate, that was the best thing. He went into the forest, but there he heard two woodcutters actually singing the pastimes of the Lord. And then he asked, whose disciples were they? and then they said that they are the disciples of Vyasadeva, right? And then Vyasadeva happens to be the father of Sukadeva Goswami. And then he goes and then he enjoys the nectar of Bhagavatam. Yeah. So before practicing advanced stages of Ashtanga Yoga, one must be purified by practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. Therefore, the Lord Krishna glorifies Nishkama Karma Yoga in first two verses. Yeah. So without Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So you cannot go to the stage of Ashtanga Yoga we discussed. And then in the first two verses also, the Lord actually stresses on the Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. So 1 and 2, right? So he actually tells it. Okay. And then even in this section, right? So he also touches the same thing, saying that one should not prematurely renounce his duties, right? And then Ashtanga Yoga is a means to control the mind and senses. Okay. And then that's very difficult in this day and age. Yeah. So why we will see the reasons. Yeah. So the mystic yogis, right? Basically, what happens is they are mostly into the satisfaction of their personal agenda. Okay. Because they want to acquire some mystic siddhis and then they want to showcase and all those things, right? So there is an sense of self-interest, yeah. So in this consequent subsequent slides, we'll see that the definition of a perfect sannyasi and yogi, right? So if we do Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So then we cover both, right? So we cover the sannyasi aspect and the yogi aspect also, right? Because those who work only for the satisfaction of the Lord without any self-interest, right? Then they are automatically sannyasi and yogi, right? So because they don't hanker for anything, and then whatever they do, so they do it for the Lord. Yeah. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is attached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obliged is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty." So this is for the sannyasis. Okay, so these particular verses which the Lord is actually talking through, it is for the sannyasis, wherein he's saying that so like you should not become a poster kind of thing. Huh? So the sloka goes like the Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita Karma Phalam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sa Sannyasa Cha Yogi Cha Na Niragnirna Chakriyaha. So and so basically we'll see that this particular yoga system is an eightfold yoga system. Okay. And then in this, the Lord actually stresses on karma yoga. Okay. Yeah. So basically, what happens is why karma yoga, right? So the purport actually, Prabhupada actually writes in. Okay. So wherein he says that, so actually, there is nothing we just saw, right? So even in the last sloka, we saw that so the enjoyer is the Lord, right? So we should actually dovetail everything. So we should actually first give it to the Lord before we enjoy, right? So in that way, so we are actually being a part and parcel of the Lord, right? So basically, the example of the body parts has been given, right? So the parts of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body, right? So if you'll have to move or something, right? All legs, hands, the mind, eyes, everything should be in tandem, right? So if they are randomly behaving, then you can't, right? So the limbs have to work, right, for the satisfaction of the complete whole, right? Similarly, the living entity have to actually work for the supreme whole, right? So, and then it is not for the personal satisfaction, right? So like to earn some siddhis and all, so those things will not work in. So rather we should actually work to actually satisfy the senses of the Lord, right? So here, so these things will cover, yeah. So these are the eightfold yoga systems. Sannyas is seeking oneness with the impersonal Brahman, right? So they want to merge to the impersonal Brahman, and then post which they say that they and the God are same, so which is not right. And then aspiring for some mystic powers is an yogi, right? And then this is the example which Prabhupada gives in. And then in this, in our Shikshashtakam, right? So there is a verse, right? So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us Shikshashtakam, yeah. So he has only given 8 verses, right? And then he didn't write any more literature. So he only imparted the knowledge to his disciples, right? So like Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and all of them. And then he empowered them to write. And then they wrote all the books, say like Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu and all those things. They were written, right? Bhakti Hari Vilas. And then there are a lot of books which they have written. So all those things were written by others. Only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave them instructions. So personally he gave the instructions, and then he asked them to develop, yeah. So but this particular verse, right, so which says na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kame mama janmani janmeshware bhavatat bhakti rahetu kitve. So this we actually sing after um, say the Tulsi Aarti, right? So after Tulsi Aarti in the morning, so during the Mangal Aarti, right? Say before the 10 offenses, we actually sing the Sikshashtakam. Yeah. So it is very beautiful actually. So in this, the Lord says that na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. So I don't want to accumulate wealth, right? So nor beautiful women, right? So nor I need people, right? So people in the sense the followers, right? So he says that Kavitam va Jagadisha Kameye, Mama Janmani Janmeshware, Bhavatat Bhakti Rahetuki. So, birth after birth, I need your costless mercy. So, he says, I need mercy for doing the devotional service. So, that is the attitude of the actual Bhakta. Okay. He doesn't have any agenda, he doesn't need anything, any siddhis, any nothing. He just want the association of the Lord, and then how we can serve the Lord. So this is we spoke, right? Should work in the Lord's. Okay, I think all these things we covered. Yeah. So this is the one, right? So this is the verse which we actually read through. So Shubhra Mataji, so can you share this Sikshashtakam document?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah, post our class, you can share it. So that is a document which everyone has to by heart. So you can do it
Yes,
slowly.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
So what is called renunciation you should know to be same as yoga or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one, can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire of sense gratification. So we should actually renounce what? We did read these things in our previous chapter, right? So for us, renouncing is what? Renouncing the results of the fruit, right? So we do the karma, so we do our sadharma, and then we do our activities, right? And then so we are not actually looking for the fruits or the results of the work, right? So, and that too, for sense gratification, absolutely no, right? So it is all for the Lord's pleasure. So Bhakti Yoga is to become attached to Krishna and work for him, thus controlling the mind and sustenance, senses. Ashtanga Yoga to give up attachment to the fruits of work, control the senses, focus the mind within. So this is, you'll focus within, yeah, Paramatma. So living entity has no separate independent identity, right? So he is the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. So this we covered actually, right? And then even yesterday I did tell that say how uh, by the contact of the material energy, right? So we actually become conditioned, right? So so yogi is by practice. So what does the yogi do, right? So he actually restrains the senses because the senses are the ones, right? So which actually feed the inputs to the mind, right? And then the mind actually captures those, right? And then doing repeatedly, right? So it takes the control over the intelligence, right? So that's the reason we should actually control our senses, right? Therefore, a Krishna consciousness is so, but a Krishna conscious person does not engage his senses in anything which is not Krishna, right? And because he has regulated lifestyle, right? So whatever he eats, so it's prasadam, right? So which is sanctified, right? And then so he goes in. He doesn't eat whatever is there, right? Even he will live. Even in the further chapters, right? The Lord will actually discuss, say, what what should be the habits of an yogi, right? So we'll cover those things there. Yeah. So this is basically the yoga ladder. Okay, so wherein the first stage of the Ashtanga yoga, right? So the first four, right, stages would be yoga rurukshu. Okay, so this is the beginning stage, right? So for the neophytes, right? So that will be called yoga rurukshu, right? Say everything starts from asana, niyama, right? Pranayama, and all those things, and then last it will go to dhyana and all those things. So if you look here, right? So where did I cover that? Yeah, these are the eightfold yoga system, right? Yama, niyama, pranayama, asana. So these four are yoga rurukshu. Yeah, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, and samadhi. So this is yoga rurukshu, and what is the other one? Yeah, so yoga rudu, right? So yoga ruda is nothing but the last four stage, and then among them samadhi is the highest one. Okay, so basically these are the categories, right? So initially, so eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is animal life. Yeah? So this is prevalent in the lower species of the planets, right? And then post that, so there is karma kanda, so which is puritive, right? So it is somewhere better, right? So at least you actually make some deal with the Lord, saying that if I do this, that's business kind of thing, but at least you go and then you actually think of the God, right? So that is good. And then slowly, once you're into that stage, right? Say once you get bored with this curative activities, this results, and all those things, right? So then you will go perform the Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So, and then by doing so, you'll actually go into higher planets, right? So renouncing the fruits of the activities. Then you get Jnana Yoga, so wherein you'll actually meditate on Brahman, the effulgence of the Lord, right? So renouncing fruits, speculative knowledge, and Brahman austerities. Then you comes on, right? Say you'll actually focus on the Dhyana Yoga or the Ashtanga Yoga, right? So wherein you'll focus on the super soul, right? So there, what you will do is you'll control your mind and senses in addition to all these things, right? So, and then post that you'll enter into the next stage, which is the loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So that is the highest stage of Bhakti Yoga, which is the prema. So once we enter, right, uh, if you are a pure devotee, right, so then the Lord welcomes like this in the Golok, right? So for one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, right? And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So initially, so in the stage, right? So wherein say we are in yoga rurukshu stage, right? So at that stage, so we'll have to perform our activities, right? So all the activities which are there, right? So all are karma. So we'll have to work. Okay. It's not that even though you practice the Ashtanga yoga, so but parallelly you'll have to work, right? Say anything. Say if you have your day-to-day work, right? So that has to be done, and in addition to that, you'll be practicing Ashtanga yoga. But once you have crossed that stage, right? So once you have crossed the four stages, right? So then once you're into the yoga ruda stage, right? The advanced stage. So then you need not perform all these um, processes, right? So like in karma yoga and all those things, you need not focus. Yeah. Yeah. And then these are basically the different rungs of an ladder. Yeah. So this is how. So the same thing, it has been given in another way, right? So this is the ladder for spiritual development, right? So Bhakti Yoga is the top, right? And then below that it comes the Ashtanga Yoga, right? And then it's Jnana, Nishkam Karma, and Karma Kanda. So until we are into this stage, right? So we'll have to perform all our activities. Then once we are here, so we have to leave those things. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in purative activities. Okay. So, whom we can say is an elevated person, right? So, and then here even the stress is given towards the yoga, right? So, what does this yoga mean, right? So, yoga is basically to connect to the Lord, right? And so, it's not only the gymnastics or the health side of thing, right? So that's that is only a part of it, right? So most of the modern yoga societies which we have in, right, so they are basically to keep our mind and body healthy, right? So but nobody actually teaches that the end goal of yoga is to actually get into samadhi, right? So that is not been taught anywhere. So it is mostly that say we have some stress, right? And then say we have some other problems like digestive problems or so we go and then say we actually practice yoga, right? So in this yoga ruda stage, right? This is basically the 6.4 is yoga ruda stage wherein one is always pleased in himself and then he's not engaged in sense gratification or the senses, right? And we'll see in the next sections, right? From 6.5, the Lord actually talks about the mind. Yeah. So yeah. So yoga ruda stage, you can give up the work, right? So a yogi may even give up Nishkam Karma Yoga when his mental control reaches the stage of regarding well-wisher, the envious, the pious and sinners. If we go into that stage, right? So if we are not envious for anything, right? And then we actually think where we are well-wishers for even to the enemies, right? At that stage, you can actually give up the work and then you can actually focus on fully on Ashtanga Yoga, right? So why I'm not experiencing pure consciousness, he's saying, right? By doing yoga. So work on mind, not on the body. So that's the thing. And then we'll see the next couple of verses, the Lord actually talks about the mind because the center of everything is mind, right? And then the mind can act in two ways, right? So either it can act as good or bad, right? It depends upon how things move on, right? So, and while we are discussing this, right? So knowing that before we go into the topic of mind, right? I just want to touch base. Say, if we know that the Lord is the proprietor, and then Lord is the well-wisher, right? And the Lord is the uh, controller of everything, right? So we should actually know about Bali Maharaj also, right? So Bali Maharaj was actually very powerful, right? And then so he actually overthrew all the devatas, and then he took the seat of Indra also, right? So devatas were having hard time, and then say the mother of devatas goes to Lord, and then she says that this is the situation, and then my kids have become poor, and then so they don't have anything to rule and all this. Then the Lord comes as a Trivikrama, right? As a small Brahmana boy, he comes and then he asks Bali Maharaj if he can give me 3 steps of land. Bali Maharaj says that, so this is very less, ask for more. So that conversation goes and it's very beautifully given in Bhagavatam. Okay. And then, so he says that, okay. And then by the time he expands as Trivikrama, right? So he actually occupies both land and the upper planets and lower planets with his 2 legs. Then he asks, where do I keep the third one? So then Bali Maharaj says, you can keep it on my head, right? So that is complete surrender. So Bali Maharaj knew that, so nothing belongs to me. So he was little bit puffed up, and then so wherein afterwards he realized that, so whatever wealth, whatever acquisition is it, so he is not the proprietor, rather the Lord is the proprietor. And then once Bali Maharaj actually surrendered him, right? So then the Lord gave him a planet to rule, and then the Lord said that you will have my darshan every day, and then I'll be your gatekeeper, right? So that's the thing. So that is the thing which I wanted to cover. Yeah. So which came to my mind now. So these are the yoga rurukshu stage, right? So he must work because he's not detached. So he still work. He's still at the learning stage, right? So he's cultivating the detachment from purative activities. So he's like a baby. So he's going into different stages, right? So until he knows how to walk, so he has to practice, right? Practice part-time asanas and perhaps pranayama while engaging in karma yoga. So he has to do karma yoga, right here. But once in the advanced stage, right, he does not act for sense gratification, right? Does not engage in furtive activities, has renounced all material desires, right? And then permitted to quit prescribed duties, Nishkam Karma Yoga can be given up. At this stage, you can give him because he has full knowledge and then he can practice. So now we'll see the next two slokas are about mind. Okay. So one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and is the enemy as well, right? So the mind can actually act in both the ways, right? So it's very dangerous, right? So in these, right, because that's the central point of yoga system, right? So wherein you actually draw the mind away from the sense objects and they'll have to control and make it as a friend. Then only you can actually be successful in your mission of, else if you are not training the mind, right, so we can't deliver these things, right? So if we don't have any control over anything, right, so if our mind is loose, right, so then we don't have control. So here if we see some sense objects and then if we become overexcited or if we become over joyous or over lamentation, all these things will not work. So in that case, you never can go and then do the practice of yoga, right? So it is like a friend or an enemy. So the way you want to treat it. So it can become like this, or it can become a saintly person, or it can become a demon also. So it is like a knife, right? So if the mind, if you are not training it properly, right? If the knife actually goes into the hand of a thief, what does he do? He can stab. He'll stab and then he'll use it for looting the money. So, but if it goes into the hand of a surgeon, what does he do? So he operates and then cures the patients, right? So in the same way, for one who has conquered the mind is the best friend. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. Okay, so if that's the problem. Uncontrolled mind is an enemy. So you'll have all demonic qualities, wherein it actually arises lust, anger, illusion, kama, krodha, lobha, right? So all this cycle will come in. So what are they? So they again will have attachment to sense gratification, right? And to achieve that, we saw, right? Say how if a person becomes bewildered, right? We saw that. So what is lust? Everything starts from the lust, right? So if you are not controlling them, then yeah, so there's a vicious cycle. If a controlled mind is a friend, so then what happens? You follows dictation of super soul, right? Detached from sense gratification. Result is elevated. Is always calm. So this is always burning. So why do you have to train your mind to deliver the conditional soul from the material existence? So that is the ultimate goal. Yeah? So how should one train the mind? So train not to be attracted by the glitter of the material nature. So we should actually focus, right? And then we should not actually get into these things, not to be degraded by attraction of sense objects. Yeah. So even the best way to disentangle mind is always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. So what is real yoga is meaning Paramatma in heart and follows his dictation. So this is what we covered in, right? So, and the other thing is in here, right? So even in nectar of instructions, we have um, the verse wherein actually Rupa Goswami actually tells in, right, in nectar of instruction, he says that the 6 things which actually make the devotional service, which actually destroys it, right? So one is atihara prayasascha, prajalpa niyamagraha, jnana janasanga chalolyam, right? So if we have these things, right, so then over endeavoring, right, atihara, so it's nothing but it's over collecting. It's not only eating but even collecting more, right? Prayasa, so doing more, over endeavoring. Prajalpa, ideal talk, right? So and niyama, rules and regulations, right? So and then janasanga, say if you are association with worldly minded people, right? So and then laulyam, you have greed, right? So all these things are not good, right? So basically talking about unnecessary mundane subjects, right? So practicing the spiritual rules and regulations for the sake, right? And then or rejecting them, right? And basically associating with people who are more on sense gratification and all those things, right? So these are all, and being greedy for the mundane activities, right? If we follow through all these things, right? So we'll never have a stable mind. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat, cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So this is what. So these are the 6 enemies, right? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Moha, Mascharya. So yeah. So one established in self-realization by virtue of knowledge and self-realization. So okay, yeah. So this is another important thing. Yeah. So wherein, so once we are in an advanced stage, right? For him, there is no difference between a stone and an gold, right? He sees them equal. Okay. So even for him, right, this pebble and then this gold doesn't seem to be different because these are all for sense gratification, right? So gold and all those things. So he is actually materially detached. So for him, there is no difference. A person is still considered further when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral meditators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and all the sinners, all within equal mind. So if anyone is able to see all these fellow, uh, basically friends we can see equally, right? And then enemies we can't, right? But if somebody has seen, he's at that level, right? So then he is an advanced yogi. So in this case, right? So Durvasa Muni happens to be having Ashtasiddhis, right? So you see how easily he could actually spin with his siddhi, right? He could actually spin a demon, so which was about to kill, right? So, but so these things didn't happen, right? So with even if you have the Ashtasiddhis, right? So it will not work, right? So even so he was so elevated, right? So he has lost his anger, right? So those things will not help us to actually advance. On the other hand, if you see, so here it is Ambarish Maharaj, right? So he was not having any anger or he was not envious of him, nothing. So he didn't move also, so he didn't get agitated. So he was in his place and then he was praying to the Lord, right? So even when the Vishnu Chakra was actually haunting Durvasa Muni, then Amrish Maharaj only actually showed his mercy, right? So he was not anger and then he didn't say that, Acha hua, so you did me, so you should actually get this. No, because he was seeing enemy, friend, everything was equal to him, right? So that is the way. Yeah. So these are all sadhana bhaktis, which is nothing but yoga rurukshu. Yeah? Yama, niyama, asana, right? And then pranayam, then pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. This is the highest stage of the yoga ladder, and samadhi is nothing but samadhi. This is dhyana. You'll completely focus your dhyana on super soul, and then you'll become samadhi. And then, so basically, the life air. So they at the end, what happens is they can actually bring the life air to the top. They'll stop, seize the different types of airs in the body, right? And then they'll actually bring it to the top, and then uh, to the head, and then so they'll actually release. So from there, then the whole comes in, and then the body leaves in. So all those things is not possible in this age. Yeah. But what do we see? So this is all the fantasy yogas which we see, right? So this is all modern day yoga. So this is only doing, it's some portion is good, but yeah. So but people should actually know what is the end goal. And then now the Lord actually teaches us how to practice yoga, right? So so one must be free from possessiveness and material desires to practice Ashtanga yoga, right? So these things has to be removed. And then now we'll see the Lord will actually tell how do we perform Ashtanga yoga. So right, so what is required to perform Ashtanga yoga, right? So basically the Lord says that to practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and soft cloth. So first thing is you'll have to go to a jungle like this, okay, where you don't have disturbance. Okay. So once you go there, right? So you should actually lay kusha grass. So you'll have to elevate your seat, right? It shouldn't be too high or too low. So it should be at an on nominal level, right? On top of it, you should actually put a cloth, right? And then on top of it, you'll have to put a deer skin, and then you'll have to sit on it and meditate it, right? The and then the seat should not be too high or too low, okay? And it should be situated in a sacred place, so wherein say in the Part1, Prabhupada writes in say like Rishikesh or some place, right? Then it should be an holy dham, okay? And then there should be some river flowing through nearby, okay? And the yogi should sit on it very firmly, right? And practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, activities, and fixing the mind on one point. So this is the way which is being suggested, right? So if one has to do yoga, right? So the instruction says so we'll have to go to a sacred place, right? In Kali Yuga, so finding a sacred place itself is a challenge. So if at all, if we get also, so the next thing what we can think is, if we go there also, we'll think is how can we actually modify this to a beautiful resort, right? So, but leave about going there and then actually doing practicing Krishna consciousness, right? And the other thing is, we should actually uh, sit on the reason the deer skin is being told is because if we sit on deer skin, right, you'll not the reptiles and all those things, right, so they'll not come and disturb you. Okay, so that's the reason that is being put, and then so there you'll have to go and then practice Ashtanga Yoga, right? So that is the way. So if we do, right, so then this is the right way to do the Ashtanga Yoga. So how to practice? So one has to go to a secluded place, one should lay kusha grass, right? So these are all things we covered, and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind senses. So there you'll have to control your senses, mind and activities and fixing the mind on one point, which is nothing but the Paramatma. Okay. So in this city life, right, where do we get this place? Right? So and then so we don't have any place where we can actually go and actually practice this, right? Um, so nor we have that much time, right? Nor our lives are so longer, right? And then he says that how do one has to sit? So we have gone there, right? So then you'll have to sit. Actually, one should hold one body, neck, and head erect in a straight line. Okay. So and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. So once you're sitting, your sitting posture is there, right? So your body, neck, and head are erect in a straight line, and then you actually focus your eyes on the tip of the nose, right? Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, right? So devoid of fear. So you should not fear that. Okay, so now I'm in jungle. So when will an hunter come and then actually hit me, or if a dacoit is coming and then he'll actually carry away me, or so what will happen if a tiger comes in? So then that's gone. And completely free from sex life. One should not meditate upon. One should meditate upon me. So and then there, if there are any ankle bell sounds and then there are any tinklings and all those things, if you get agitated, then gone, right? So we saw Vishwamitra Muni and all those Sobara Muni, right? So one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So you should only think of the Lord. So if we can do that, so then that is the perfect Ashtanga Yoga. So that is how one has to perform. So which is actually quite impossible in this age of Kali, right? So and even the kind of lifestyles we are actually imitating now with the Western world, right? So everyone is becoming a Westerner, right? So with less time, fast results. So where is the time to do all these things, right? That's the reason in the Naradya Purana, right? It is said for the Kali Yuga, right? So when the age is short-lived, right? And then spiritualize realization is very slow, right? And then we are always disturbed with anxieties, right? So for them, the best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Harer Nama, Harer Nameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasti, Eva Nasti, Eva Nasti, Nasti Eva Gatiranyatha. So this is from the Shastras, okay? So it is not that we are actually chanting the holy names, right? So the chanting of the holy name is given in the Puranas. So from there, so even they have given. So what can the Kali Yuga people do, right? So for them, Hare Nam is the only means. So basically, what does this particular shloka mean is in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. That's what Nasteva, 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 it's been said, right? So there is nothing, there is no other way. So we'll have to practice in that way. Yeah? So this is all more or less we covered in, right? Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. If we perform all those things and then we focus, then we can actually go to the Paramatma. So this is eight-limbed yoga, yeah. So this is basically what is yama, niyama, right? External disciplines, internal disciplines, asana is postures, pranayama is breath control, pratyahara withdrawal of senses, dharana concentration, dhyana is the meditative absorption, and samadhi is union and integration. Okay. So yeah, I think this will actually cover in the next chapters wherein it gives what was the yama niyama asana, right? So we'll just cover one when we are just starting the intro part, right? So these are the ladders. Yeah. So I just want to touch this, right? So here the Lord says, right? And we'll stop after one more verse. Okay. So here the Lord says that there is no possibility of once becoming a yogi or Arjuna if one eats too much or eats too less, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Okay. So these are the criteria of being a yogi. Okay. So if somebody wants to become a yogi, right, the first and foremost thing is so he has to follow through these things. So wherein he has to have everything regulated. Okay. So he should have a balanced eating lifestyle, sleeping, recreation, and work, right? So anything extra. So if somebody is have overeats or is actually eating less, even in that case, you cannot perform. You cannot become an yogi. Or if you're sleeping more than the regulated time, or you're not sleeping. So what happens if you sleep more than the timing? So you'll lose the Brahma Muhurta time and everything. So if you're sleeping less, then you can't concentrate, right? So everything should be perfect. Eating too much. So if you're eating too much, then you can't concentrate because you'll feel sleepy. If you're eating less, then also there is a problem. You're not able to maintain your body requirements, right? You'll become weak, right? So that's what the Lord says in Yuktahara Viharasya Yukta Chetasya Karmashu Yukta Swapno Bodhasya Yogo Bhavati Dukkha. He who is regulated in his habits of drinking, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So, this is the formula which we'll have to follow through. So if somebody has to do the Ashtanga yoga, right? So Ashtanga yoga is not mere exercises, right? So it has to actually go through a lot of things, right? But if somebody is able to regulate his habits of sleeping, eating, recreation, and work, right? So and work can mitigate all material planes by practicing of yoga system. If we do all these things, then we will be actually elevate ourselves. Because if we do all those things, so our life will be regulated in the work, speech, right? So whatever we talk, so whatever activities we do, right? So everything will be in perfect knowledge, right? So Hare Krishna will actually stop today here, and then we'll continue the rest of the sections in the next chapter. So because this was the introduction of Dhyana Yoga, and then I think we took some time to understand how difficult uh, Dhyana Yoga is, right? And we understood what is the best available thing which we can do in this Kali Yoga. Hare Krishna, anything you would like to ask from today's topic? Okay. So thank you for your association. We'll meet in the next class. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.